welcome to episode 6 of the Painted Bread Quarterly Slush Pile. We take more time than other editorial boards, but we stand behind our methodology. So much so that we're going to share our process with you through this podcast. Welcome to the editorial table. So I am Kathleen Volk-Miller. I'm co-editor of the Painted Bread Quarterly, and I run the graduate program in publishing here at Drexel University. And I publish mostly memoir at this point. I've got two people in the studio with me today, and one of them is Tim Fitz.
Hi, my name is Tim Fitz, and I'm an instructor here at Drexel University, and I've been reading with the Painted Bread Quarterly for a few years. I mostly write short stories, but occasionally novels, and I'm happy to have some photography work in the upcoming issue of the Santa Clara Review.
Wonderful. And we have a first-timer.
Hi, I'm Melody Nielsen. I'm a recent graduate of Drexel University and a former editorial intern for Painted Bread Quarterly. And I'm excited to join you guys today.
That's wonderful. Okay, and Jason, tell us about yourself and where you are.
Hi, this is Jason Schneiderman. I'm associate editor at Painted Bread Quarterly and head of the New York staff, as well as an assistant professor at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. And I am at my lovely home in Bedford-Stuyvesant at a yellow Parsons table.
Lovely. I can picture you almost. I haven't seen the house since it's been completely redone. Miriam.
Hi, I'm Miriam Heyer. I'm a senior editor of PBQ, and I'm on the New York staff. And I'm coming to you from Union Square, where I am looking out the window at a beautiful day and a beautiful tree that's looking alive. So I'm feeling good.
Oh, wonderful. First, it is starting to actually feel and look like spring out there. Excuse me. So Marion Wren is in a 9-hour time difference from us, and she's entertaining people at a conference, literally sending me shots of herself at a party, and also telling me that she hopes to jump in on this session if and when she can. So we'll see if that happens. If that does happen, we'll call her Dr. Wren to distinguish between Miriam and Marion. But something happened, you guys, for the first time. This is only episode 6, but a poet said no, that we could not discuss her work on this podcast. And I think we should talk about that for just a minute or two. Because, I'm not that great at math, but roughly we've asked 12 to 15 poets, and everybody has said yes. And when we were at AWP talking to about 12,000 poets, all of them were saying, what can I do to get on your podcast? So let's discuss. We have a poet who said no.
Yeah, I mean, I think just by asking, you're giving yourself the chance that somebody might say no.
Right. But I'm saying that most people want to hear their work discussed.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody has this sick desire to hear what other people think of their work, but then maybe when it comes right down to it, it is pretty scary to hear your work discussed in such an objective manner.
Right.
We're going to read them anyway, right?
No, that would be illegal.
We're going to discuss them, but not in public. I've talked about this before, that this podcast is in many ways kind of aligned with the ways in which social media is doing a huge amount of work to dissolve the boundaries between public and private. And I think that, there are a lot of people who are moving off of social media and who are kind of insisting that they do want a kind of privacy. And it doesn't surprise me that someone would want to say, actually, I'd rather not be discussed in public. I would like the work to be presented or not presented, but I'd rather have the kind of discussion stay behind closed doors.
Yeah, I don't want to quote or misquote. I'm not going to read the email, but she just basically said, this is still private for me. This is still new to me. It's still private for me. I can't, the thought of having a conversation about my work go public is just something I'm not comfortable with. So absolutely respect.
I think that's interesting because my own kind of imagined anxiety would really revolve around hearing the editorial conversation. I mean, I guess also everyone else hearing it, but I think that there is something that especially for people who are developing their work, there's something intimidating about letting in that possible influence, right? Like letting in the judgment.
Right.
And, when it's just yes or no, that's one thing. But when there's substantive kind of content, it could influence how you feel about your own work.
Right. Yeah, our joke has been a couple episodes ago, Maggie Queenie said, how fascinating and terrifying. And that was the response we got from a lot of the people we were talking about at AWP. Scary. Oh my God, how do I do it? Right? And so the scary part, makes a lot of sense. And just to be clear to any of our listeners, every submission is considered for the podcast, but we would never do one of two things. We would never discuss you anyway on the podcast, and we would never discuss you differently at the editorial table if you say no. This poet had a little bit concern in that regard as well, that that the work would not be discussed in the same way. And I did my best. I hope I assured her. So that's that for that. I just thought it was interesting and worth a moment of our time.
Well, I do understand the fear of having your work discussed publicly like that, but I also, for me, a greater fear is having no idea what the editorial board is thinking of my work.
That's exactly
how
what I was
close
thinking.
you're getting, or how it's resonating with people outside your little dungeon.
Well, that's also how workshops are constructed, right? I mean, the idea of the Iowa workshop where you're silent while everyone talks about your work. And anyone who's ever taught a workshop or been in a workshop knows how fraught that space can be. I mean, if you can think about, the worst experience you've ever had in a workshop, and then having that be frozen in amber on a podcast that just kind of keeps going out into the world. I understand why that person would make that choice. And I was also thinking that there's a lot of discourse around safe spaces and risk. And we tend to have, this kind of like culture that valorizes risk and valorizes courage and valorizes, going out there and, being vulnerable. But there's also, a real push to create safe spaces where people can feel comfortable. And I'm not surprised that someone would err on the side of safety over risk.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to see how it keeps going. I mean, so far the percentage is high of folks that would rather have it discussed. So I guess we'll just keep on moving on.
I mean, as a young writer who's kind of submitted to a lot of places and gotten a lot of rejections, and some acceptances, but I feel like I would love to hear, what people are saying about my work so that I can then kind of go to work at, making it more whatever it needs to be.
Right. The poets who've gotten back to me, whose work we've discussed, are all using a lot of the same language that you guys are using right now, that it felt like a workshop again, that they were afraid, but they would rather listen than not know, and all of those things. Yeah. So hopefully, I feel like we will always have enough poets who are willing, and we're going to be doing fiction too down the line. So everybody make sure you're aware of that. But let's jump in here. We have Carlos Gomez, Morning Rikers Island, to start us off. And who would like to read?
I'll read.
Thank you, Melody.
Morning Rikers Island. Physics and light pierced the hollow stench of the forgotten gymnasium stripped naked of clocks. All the boys stopped, offered their grief to each other like water, glancing out the only window they shared. A single ray unfolds its warmth across the dusty belly of the thudded parquet. And here's the miracle.
Thanks, Miriam. I think we're all still just staring at the poem for another second. Remember that these poems are available for you to read along with us on the PBQ site at each episode's on each episode.
There's a lot of words and phrases that I really like here. I underlined some things. Hollow stench, dusty belly, stripped naked of clocks. I like a lot of the things that he's doing with like interesting sounds of words and like images. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of there until the last two lines. And then it kind of gets a little cheesy for me there.
I liked the cheese there because it surprised me. I actually think that was a moment that I went, oh, like it's something as simple as that. Here we are in Rikers Island with all this grief and this visual of these people looking out their single shared window. But they could, but the fact that another day had come could still be perceived as a miracle.
Yeah. I think the word miracle just conjures up like cheesy Lifetime movies and things like that for me. I don't know. There's something about that word that I just don't like.
Sure.
That's just personal.
So were they all in the gymnasium in the dark?
I don't know.
I don't really understand how the ray of light... I'm kind of confused by how the ray of light sort of is so profoundly distracting. Like, were they sleeping in there? I'm confused.
Well, I think that the sun is like, there's just been a shift, right? So the sun has, I guess, risen. And to me, the fact that we started not only with light, but with physics and light, that there's some kind of movement, either of the sun itself or of the rays. And I think that there's also this moment in which it's calling a different quality of attention that makes the miracle possible.
I read it the same way as Miriam. Something about physics being involved in the light and the stripped naked of clocks. I'm not sure that they were in a gym in the dark, but I think the sun just started beaming in that window.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something different about the quality of the sunlight that's
made their attention
compelling.
Yeah,
it is stunning.
That's my read.
I'm kind of hung up on this line, stripped naked of clocks. I love this line because everywhere is so stripped naked of clocks now. It's so difficult to find out. I mean, I've got a pretty good sense of time. I pretty much always know about what time it is, but I'm trying to teach my kids how to tell time. And every time I want to show them the time, or if I really need to know the time, if I'm late for class or got a deadline, we all have our phones and we all have ways to tell time ourselves, but there's no collective sort of baseline of time around anywhere anymore.
Wow.
And for me, it's kind of a suffocated feeling. I don't like this movement of no clocks. It feels sort of imprisoning for me. And I like that this is one of the images that this writer brings out.
See, for me, that line almost creates this sort of like dreamlike quality where this is like a place that time doesn't exist, or where there's this sense of unreality, like they say you can tell you're dreaming if you like look at a clock and it's doing weird things. For me, it kind of heightens the sense that this is a place that is not part of our reality, because for me, it seems like, there's not any analog clocks anywhere anymore, but we all have our phones that we know exactly what time it is at all times.
That's the feeling I also get by not having clocks around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of...
Just to expand on the idea of time in this environment, I kind of like the idea of the sun moving so that the day has actually started before you realize that another day has come, right? When the sun is in a particular position in this forgotten room, then you kind of acknowledge this miracle. And I was also really conscious of the fact that the people in this room, though it is void of clocks, are sentenced. Like there's something about their time that has been quite literally taken from them.
Right.
But also the end of the poem made me feel like there was also a possibility of being so present because of that. Like when you think of the fact that this poem is about taking note of sunlight in a particular way, not exactly in a redemptive way, but that it kind of allows for a different sense of observation.
Well, I mean, I've only taught in prisons. I've never actually been imprisoned, but there is a different passage of time in jail, and there's a different kind of attention. And I'm willing to trust the poet that this is an accurate representation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the title is smart with physics and light, and then the single ray and the cheese ball last two lines. For me, they work. I think we might be able to vote on this one. I don't know if there's much more to say, and we have so much more to do. Would you? Are we voting to vote?
Yeah.
Can we vote to
Let's
vote?
vote.
Okay. So Miriam and Jason are New Yorkers. If you can text Joe your yes or no, that would be terrific. And in the room, we're going to do our 1, 2, 3 shoot. Thumbs up, thumbs down. 1, 2, 3 shoot. Okay, so in the room, we have 2 yes and 1 no.
1 yes and 1 no.
And in New York, we have 1 yes and 1 no. So it's 3-2. Majority rules. Morning,
Yes.
Rikers Island is in. Okie dokie. We have another longer, differently shaped one from Carlos next. Interracial in Flatbush, Brooklyn. Who wants to do that?
I can read.
Thank you, Melody.
Interracial in Flatbush, Brooklyn. We watch them do this, expand from all directions like lungs abruptly filling with water as we hold hands and walk through the eye of another storm. A man grabs his crotch, offering it to my wife, flings a mouthful of spit and epithets toward us. Each pupil is a dim swamp flooding, silence blanketing a shallow body in Neshoba County, dusk shedding its absence across the congealed oven grease beneath a rusted burner. A woman's neck swivels when we pass, wraps a hard vowel around her tongue like lighter fluid choking a glass bottle holding a fuse. On this corner, scored by dancehall and soca, there is nothing more novel than me and my love's contrasting hues. It ignites a rush of color from these strangers' faces. They ring us a violence familiar as February weather. Mine, our skin for metaphors, demand we offer answers to questions they are still forming like infants from their throats. I have watched my body's primal wisdom flicker dark as a fist-concealed palm, ache so volatile it screams for release. Rage is a language I unlearn on the corner of Ocean Avenue and Church. No shoreline or cathedrals in sight, only fractured things decorating a broken sidewalk like littered snow. A new voice pierces the air, a flood of sound that hits me like a wall of ice, louder and higher pitched than those before. This time a small child with brown eyes, brown skin and green eyes, writhing in her flimsy stroller, pointing toward the dimpled oval.
Is the child at the end of the poem his child?
That I was a little confused about.
I do not think so. Because
It seems like he would mention,
Yeah.
right? Because, like, I mean, the wife is in the poem.
right.
Yeah.
And the first line, we watch them do this. Expand from all directions
Mhm.
like lungs, right? As we hold hands and walk through the eye of another storm. So it's an interracial couple taking a walk and then talking about each of the people they pass and their reactions. And that's what the little child does at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Because they keep walking, right? I leave behind in the hazel colored slush.
Mm-hmm.
So do we have an interracial child recognizing, like, is there something that this child sees in the man that makes the child recognize resemblance? Like, I was just interested in the fact that we're pointed out that the child has brown skin and green eyes, and whether that's supposed to code as an interracial kind of identity.
That's how I read it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's the sigh for, Jason Schneiderman? That was a very specific and targeted sigh.
I should have silenced my mic. I don't know. I don't know.
It's
It makes
okay.
me. I mean, like trying to separate the sadness of the fact that interracial couples are still treated as objects of harassment in Flatbush or in America. The reference to Neshoba County, which is where the 3 civil rights workers were killed in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of direct line between the sort of the successes of the civil rights movement and the failures of the civil rights movement and the movement forward. And then just trying to sort of do the question of talking about the art separately from the politics. Claudia Rankine was talking about that at AWP, that it was important not to do exactly what I'm trying to do right now, which is sort of thinking about it artistically and politically in separate breaths. And I'm trying to think if, I can do that together. And so that's my sigh is for American history.
I mean, I think you could probably tell by my increasingly enthusiastic reading of this that I really enjoyed this poem. I mean, and just me personally, I love poetry that's both personal and political, and this felt like both to me, as well as having some really powerful phrases that I really felt reverberate as I was reading.
I don't understand why rage is unlearned on the corner of Ocean and Church. It seems to me that rage would be building.
I was actually just looking at that line. I think, I mean, I can relate it to something that I've experienced in terms of maybe like street harassment, where you kind of learn to ignore people's comments and to not respond in a way that feels like you're letting go of that like angry response. That's kind of how I read that it's almost like not even worth it to try and be angry about it.
I think it's because there's the habit of feeling rage at the harassment, and then you hear the little kid's voice and you realize that the kid's not harassing him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an innocent voice, and that he has to sort of check his emotions and sort of, instead of just relying on his instinct or the habit of responding in that manner. Did I win?
Sorry, that was me.
But I also like this poet. I like the poem we just read, and I feel like the voice is it's a nice, rich voice with a lot of great images and action. And
this poem feels a lot denser and a lot more emotive than the previous one, and I think that's why it feels like the stakes are higher for the poet. I think that's why I'm really feeling this one.
Mm-hmm. Miriam, how you doing there in Union Square?
I am working on, similar to the unlearning, I have watched my body's primal wisdom flicker dark as a fist concealed palm. Like I'm working on dark there. And the fact that there's something in your body that you have inherited, like when I think of like a primal kind of, it's in you, you've inherited it. I don't know. I'm kind of living in those lines right now.
I didn't go to the Claudia Rankine talk. We tried. I forget what happened that we didn't make it there. And now reading this and hearing what Jason had to say about it, I think for me, the art is really present. This isn't just quote unquote just. I don't know how to use just there. A political statement. I think it's really well crafted.
No, I think it is very personal. I'm not on board with all of the images as much as I want to be.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we can vote on this one?
Yeah.
All right, Miriam, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, shoot. What do we have there, Joe?
2 notes.
We have 3 yeses and 2 nos. So it's another one that's
I'd say
in.
yes.
I'm going to also ask you guys, should we ask if we can put that one in locals? Should that
Oh yeah, I
one
think
go?
it'd be great in locals.
All right.
Actually, that would, yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Okay. So the Rikers Island can be in an unthemed, and the Flatbush will go in locals. We have one more from this poet, and it's called Black Hair. Tim, you want to read this one?
Sure. Black hair. I made her a vow that I always would. So I joined 2 fresh clusters in my clumsy and careful hands as I cradle her slumbering nape. I am submerged in the calculus of it all, as though concentration is where I took my misstep, as though I am not 3 decades behind in my practice, as though it is just about finding the pattern too late. I'm too late, I think, or maybe it's something else. His hands never knew how to fix my sister's hair. I tend each thick onyx strand like I'm mending her favorite blanket, as though my calloused digits might coax and shape anything into an ordered grace. I layer another braid into the tiny maze crowning her scalp. I can feel with each pull and twist the newly assembled crib watching.
I don't understand that last line.
I guess they have a new crib, so maybe they're expecting a baby.
Expecting, okay. So the person whose hair is being braided is a lover, not a daughter. I think I also assumed it was a young girl. I made her a vow that I always would. Maybe not.
His hands never knew.
As I cradle her slumbering nape, I just, yeah.
Yeah, and then later he says his hands never knew how to fix my sister's hair.
Right.
And then who's he? There's a lot of pronouns here that are not being attributed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why I assumed it was a father braiding a daughter's hair, because I thought that he was then making a comparison with his father's relationship with his sister. But I mean, I don't have really any evidence for that. That was just my reading.
Yeah.
No, I think that makes sense that the wife is interracial and had a white father who didn't know how to do black hair. And he doesn't want to be in that same position as they're looking at the crib for the child they're about to have as he does his wife's hair.
There you go.
I really like the rhythms of this one much better than the rhythms of the last one. I really thought that this was, the prosody in this one I thought was much, much stronger.
Some of the phrases in here feel really forced to me, or just like trying a little too hard. I don't know. Submerged in the calculus of it all. It just, I don't know. It's such a loving act, and I love the image of it, but I feel like that gets lost in this very like precise, almost like technical language that he uses in some places.
Mm-hmm.
That my callous digits might coax and shape. I don't know. It feels I don't know. It feels rigid to me.
Does anybody feel creepy? Creeped out?
Creepy?
I feel
No,
well, but this is going on while she's sleeping.
And
Her slumbering nape.
Slumbering could be.
No, but her hair is, yeah.
I feel like
didn't
resting.
think-
As I cradle her slumbering nape.
I hate that. I hate slumbering nape. That's so. There's something about the word nape that just really, really makes my skin crawl. I don't know.
Yeah, Miriam, did you just say slumbering is resting?
No, I just meant that
I
like
said that.
there's a pre and I don't know. To me, one of the things that was interesting to think about in this kind of vision of fatherhood that I cooked up is that he's 3 decades behind in practice, not only because there's the interracial relationship that we're kind of reading into this, but also because he's a man who's assuming he's going to be doing a little girl's hair. And I think that is kind of one of the displacements or one of the interesting kind of challenges of having a child who's not exactly like you, and I was very sympathetic to it.
All right.
Yeah, I like the word. I don't have a problem with the word nape. I don't know what
That's
Even-
just personal.
Even with slumbering in front of it? Slumbering nape?
I don't know. It sounds like something from like a vampire novel to me. Her slumbering nape.
I hate to compare this poem to the poem before that I liked, which I liked a lot, but the shift that happens in the previous poem to me is more powerful than what's happening in this poem.
Mm-hmm.
And I've lived abroad for a number of years. In a couple of years living in the countryside in South Korea, I dealt with daily harassment. And there's a kind of bitterness that happens when you're when you're taunted by every kid in the city,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes you hardened for a while, and so for me that's a personal reason why I like that second poem, I like that moment. This one, it seems less important for this for the voice in this poem. And the eyes on another issue, there's 13 eyes, which sounds a little bit nitpicky, but this seems like there's got to be a way to have less eyes in a poem. And they just kind of every time I hear an I think I think after a while I think I don't care anymore because about this person and their poem. And it's just a reaction I have. But if there are maybe just a few of eyes, then I think I am less bothered by it.
I get what you're saying. I think my thing with this, which is kind of related, is that I kind of like, I don't really know what the stakes are. Like I was saying with the poem before, I was like, the stakes feel really high. I understand
Mm-hmm.
what is, like what the problem is, or like what the,
Yeah.
but I feel like with this one, I'm not sure. I feel like, I don't really know why I should care almost.
I think that this poem actually tells us what the stakes are, and the first made her a vow.
Yeah.
And whether the her is the romantic partner / mother, or it's the unborn child, there really is something extremely anxiety causing about being an expectant parent who's not sure you can fulfill all of the promises of parenthood, especially the ones that are specific to your situation, which is that you're going to have to possibly braid black hair. And I think that, this is, I took it as a very serious kind of moment of, expecting that you're going to have to perform and imagining an audience such that even the newly assembled crib is possibly judging you or looking at you, or that there's this real moment where you have to kind of live the embodiment of your relationship. And I think that happens for all parents, but this is a very particular challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm reading it the way Miriam is, that there's so much intimacy in the relationship between the husband and wife, and then the fear of that being triangulated by this child that maybe failed. I found that really poignant.
Okay. It sounds like we're ready to vote.
Yeah.
You guys ready? 1, 2, 3, shoot.
Yes.
We have 3 yeses and 2 nos. So Carlos Gomez in total is 3 for 3.
That's pretty impressive.
That is pretty impressive. And these
Well
poems
done,
are,
Carlos.
yeah, very, think it's interesting that our votes were as they were, as diverse as they were, but it's terrific. 3 for 3 for Carlos Gomez. And yeah. Let's move on to Adam Day. Now, if you remember, if you're a good listener, you listened to episode 5 where we talked about the fact that Adam Day had had some stuff in Submittable that got sucked out one by one and accepted by other places. And he sent us a new batch, and these poems are from that new batch. Who would like to read? The Quiet Life. Tim?
Okay. Adam Day, The Quiet Life. You is a pricey practical joke, a missed appointment, termination that didn't take, doctor without depth, military march, intolerant of mystery, a dinner party, grope, and stock exchange, growing aroused in the shadow of compromise, in the pantry's smell of lessening, of whatever comes along. You have him, you can't have anything dripping, and no one to see, and you should be feared to share him, your shrunk-breasted enthusiasm and shaven gape, like a mouth ajar, an overworn loafer. You'll lip-tongue and hand him poor spunk, half-screwed, like moth larva rolling in a rice jar, to make nothing out of nothing but a back bend and take 3/4 of an hour over it. No one ever captured the insanity of monologue like you did, vulgarizing anger into irritation and a plaster of panic, grinding fists into your eyes like our child. So quiet now it scrapes the calm from bones, punctuated with involuntary exonerations, the house in weed, shingles steaming, all fog and submission, a celibate brothel. If nuns carried their duties as you sexed all saints they'd be. No solicitation in a street urinal, no sodomizing the duck on account of its down, no slush of thrushes in the rain gutter, no train of dangers or snoring next door, eyes unlit, half the sun and twice the rent.
Okay, I'll start the conversation with my ignorance. I have no idea what that was. What?
So I read this a couple times because I read it, Kathy, when you first sent over the file, and I was like, what? And then reading it again now, I think this is just like one hell of a diss track towards someone. Maybe his ex-wife, because he says, like our child. I don't want to assume wife, ex. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like he's just really, really disgusted with someone, which I would like him kind of into. I feel like it's an unusual, it's a feeling in a poem that you don't see, I think, as often as other things, you know. And it's definitely, some of the images are like gross and creepy, which I think is the intention, which I like.
And then with the title on top, The Quiet Life.
Yeah.
Well, it won me over with sodomizing the duck.
Oh, see that? I was like, I don't know.
No, it did.
No.
I do really like some of those phrases. I've just never heard so many of those in such a small space that I was reading and I don't really like the poem very much, but I love some of those moments.
I love all fog and submission.
Yeah, that's great.
It's great. Some of the syntax is confusing though. You can't wait. Okay, so you'll have him. You can't have anything dripping and no one to see. I'm kind of trying to figure out what is the syntax that's happening in that phrase. I'm not really sure.
I mean, it signals at the very beginning, I thought with you as a pricey practical joke that it was really going to be about the notion of sorry, you guys won again. I felt like I needed more context for this. And it's not that I want everything to make narrative sense. I'm totally okay with, you know, a kind of free-floating play with syntax, emotion, and feeling. But in this one, I really did want something to ground it a little bit more. And I wondered if it would make sense in the context of a manuscript or a narrative. So I felt like there wasn't enough to kind of position me in terms of the poem.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, Melody, maybe we all are getting like that it would be fun to see something fresh with all of this vitriol directed at someone, but we need a little more of that focus, a little more of that context.
I definitely agree. I think the fact that I had to read it 3 times in order to make some sort of connection of meaning with it speaks to that. It's a lot of words and a lot of like play with words, which is fun, but there's a lot of places that I don't feel it connecting.
You want to vote? Or Miriam, you didn't chime in on that? You ready to just vote?
I am ready to vote.
Okay, let's go. 1, 2, 3, vote? So that is a no on that one. But we have more from Madam Day. So let's move on. My Telemachus.
I can read.
Okay.
My Telemachus. The dog drinking water sounds like a horse trotting, my 5-year-old says. Well, look at you, brilliant little Oedipal bastard, trying to steal my crown. And he is illegitimate. Ask your mother if you can find her. But Patton was too, and look what he achieved.
You know, I didn't love this when I was reading it, but hearing it out loud, I enjoyed it a lot more.
I love this image of like a father being jealous of his son's like talent with words.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you little bastard, you stole my literary thunder.
Yeah.
I like the Telemachus reference.
Yeah.
There was a tiny misread in the parenthetical toward the end. Brilliant little Oedipal bastard trying to steal my crown. And he is illegitimate. Ask his mother if you can find her. Is addressing like this other person instead of your mother. There's just a tiny misread.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's cool, but I think it's important.
Yeah. Ask his mother.
Right. So you can see these poems on our site page, but that phrase is also in a parenthetical, which I like.
Yeah.
And he is illegitimate. Ask his mother if you can find her.
So Patton was also trying to steal his crown?
No, Patton was also illegitimate.
Right.
The syntax.
But the parentheses, right?
Right.
Okay. Brilliant little Oedipal bastard trying to steal my crown, but Patton was too, and look what he achieved. Is really how you would read it.
You are so right. Grammar.
The copy editor in you has won.
Oh, man.
The copy editing is strong with this one.
I mean, I'm not saying it's a mistake.
No, it is.
It is a mistake. You are saying it's a mistake.
No, I think Miriam, you're absolutely right. We have to move the the second parentheses has to go to right before the period.
Yeah.
So if it's trying to steal my crown, open parentheses, and he's illegitimate, semicolon, ask his mother if you can find her, comma, but Patton was too, and look what he achieved, close parentheses, period. We have to ask for that edit.
That whole thing could end on a parenthetical. That actually would be cool. I like that, Jason.
Yeah. I like that this is a poem that tells a story, and just like in a very small little encased receptacle.
It's really tiny. Yeah, it's a little tiny thing.
And I like that it feels like you kind of understand the relationship between this father and son a little bit by just reading this interaction.
And the mother.
Yeah.
And we ask for the edit that Jason just asked for because of Miriam's copy editing wizardry. We also get to end it with the direct address to the son, right? His last words are trying to steal my crown, right? And then it's a parenthetical to us. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, little side note, we do sometimes ask authors for edits. We try to avoid that and basically say yes or no on what we see on the page. But if an edit is easy, like this one, moving a parenthetical, deleting a whole stanza, we will on occasion ask for edits. This would be one I would be comfortable asking for sure. Yeah. Are you guys ready to vote? New York,
I'm ready to vote.
All right, let's
and
do it.
we're voting with the request for the
with the assumption that the edit will be granted. Okay, ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3, vote. Split. It's a split decision, but more people have said yes. So Adam Day is now 1 down, 1 in.
Right.
All right. Jason, you haven't read. like to hear everyone read, but I like to hear you read. Do you want to read the next one?
Thank you. Yeah, sure. I'll take the next one.
Okay.
Although I'm not sure how to say Openango. Am I saying that right? Openango?
I did.
Sounds
Ooh,
good to
say
me.
it again. Say it again. Say it one more time.
Openango?
Yeah, I like it.
I'm guessing. I'm putting the accent on the second to last syllable as though it's Spanish. I don't know.
I like it.
Openango. After Sherman Alexie. I had just begun ice fishing. A walleye taught me how. A fish with a headdress. He called me white man. Man, I'm tired of that racist shit. It's like, if I didn't vacation at your ice hole, you wouldn't have that casino. And don't look at me like that, lying on your side, a vein.
Well, that caused quite a titter in the room.
Yeah, this one's got attitude. I like it.
Openango is a Native American language.
Oh, thanks for looking that up. I liked how you read it. You read it staccato, and it worked.
Yeah, I think what really gets me is it's like if I didn't vacation at your ice hole, you wouldn't have that casino.
Yeah, that was the line that made
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
bust out. That's a.
That really got me.
Mhm.
But I think it's ironic. I don't think.
Yeah.
It's in the voice of the Trump supporter thinks that a casino makes up for genocide.
Yeah, or thinks that reverse racism exists.
I love that image at the end. A vein of blood skating the black plate of your eye.
Yeah.
So can I ask why the title? Because I know Jason told us that it is a native language, but
So it's the Native people. It's the Native people. The Abenaki people of New Hampshire. It's Openango is the native name. Sorry. I'm Googling too quickly. Openango was the name of a historical community of Abenaki people in New Hampshire. It may have been a French or English corruption of the Abenaki place name Benokoik, which means at the falling bank, and is also the source of the tribal name Panakuk.
Okay, so we're suspecting that the reason for the title is that these are the people he's engaging with and visiting.
Yeah.
That places us.
I wonder, I know Sherman Alexie is a Native American poet. I wonder if he is Openango, or if that's I don't know, if that's a direct reference to his heritage, or if he writes about that in one of his poems.
Are you Googling, Jason?
Isn't he from
I
Washington?
am.
I'm not sure.
I am checking to see.
Yeah. While Jason's looking that up first, I really do like the rhythm of this. And I have to say the truth on this too. On the page, I was just not that engaged. But hearing it really worked. Sherman Alexie is from Spokane, Washington. So I don't know why it's after Sherman Alexie specifically. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, he does write a lot about Native Americans and the ways in which they're mistreated and misunderstood.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just looking again. I really like these couple of lines. A walleye taught me how to fish, a fish with a headdress. I like the little added moment that this native fish that he's bad-mouthing is the one who taught him the skills that he's
Mhm.
currently using. I like that's a nice little ironic twist in there.
Mm-hmm.
I like the poem. I don't like the line, "I'm tired of that racist shit," because I feel like that tells me what I was already thinking. And I'm not crazy about the Sherman Alexie at the beginning, because for me it's distracting, because when I read it the first time, when I looked it up and saw that it was from New Hampshire and I knew he was from Washington, it just put me out of sorts before starting it. and it stayed there. It wasn't something that, and it's still not going away in my mind. I'm bothered. It makes me think like any Indian name will do, any Native American name or tribe will do for the, and maybe that's my issue, or maybe there's something that I'm not seeing here. But it is a little distracting.
I'd like to know what the actual allusion is, if it's to a specific poem or.
Yeah, and I think it works anyway. I think everything else works besides those two things.
I actually don't have a problem with the I'm tired of that racist shit, because to me it feels like a really apt caricature of a specific kind of person that, kind of person that I've met or engaged with on Facebook in the past. So I actually kind of like it. I think it's funny.
Neither of these issues are deal breakers for me. They're just two issues that kind of get on my nerves.
I don't really know. I understand that we're in this voice, and that some of the work here is irony and is perhaps inherently delightful, but I don't really know where the poem is pointing me. I don't know that I have kind of seen anything new or enlightening about this voice. I'm not talking about like a lesson or a kind of way of thinking, but I don't really know what the poem is bringing to me other than the momentary delight of the absurdity, which when you think about it is not really delightful at all. So I don't know.
Yeah, it makes me think of the thing that we talk about, the one-time read. Do you read this once and then not come back?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I sort of feel like it moves in two directions, because at the beginning there's this sort of just so story, right? There's a kind of surrealist or magical realist fable quality. A walleye taught me how to fish, a fish with a headdress. And then it just kind of goes in a totally different direction, and it moves away from, I mean, I'm just not, I'm not, the movement of the poem feels a little off to me. But I get it, right? I mean, like we're in the midst of a sort of just so story, but then it moves into race.
Yeah.
Or racism.
Well, I think it's that what we may interpret at first as magical realism is actually always racism. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that we're kind of in this discourse before we realize we're in it.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes that we're in the discourse before we really. Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. That the discourse is always. I'm gonna sigh again. I'm gonna try not to.
It can be your thing.
It can be my thing.
Yeah.
Like, we can have a sigh.
That's a Jason Schneiderman sigh.
I guess I'm also wondering, like, who is Adam Day and what's his investment in this topic? Is he of Native American descent? Is he white? Is he someone who's involved in sort of anti-racist, like, activism? Like, is it...
Oh, so he's not allowed to write about this he's not any of those things?
No, I mean, I certainly think he's allowed to write about it. I'm like Jason was saying, like, I guess I'm not sure why his voice on this is a voice that matters to me. I don't I like the poem. But it is also kind of, I'm not sure what the investment is.
Are we ready to vote? We can't vote on whether we're ready to vote?
We're ready. I think I'm ready.
Okay. All right.
I was muted. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm ready.
1, 2, 3, vote. What do we got?
2 no's.
Okay, that one's a no. There was a little wink of a yes there, but yeah, the majority is a no on that one. So Adam Day is 1 for 3, which isn't too bad. And that had that interesting story behind it. So good work, everyone. There's no time to talk about associated writing programs and the fact that I saw Jason Schneider in the least of any time because he was busy with his own newest book. Right,
I'm
Jason?
sorry. I know. I was
know.
really it was my busiest AWP ever.
Yeah, the least we hung out. So we'll have to make up for that soon in Philly or New York. But for our listeners, please let us know what you think. Every episode has its own Facebook event, and they're linked on our own webpage and on our Facebook page. Thank you for your patience as we're still learning how to do this whole thing. Sign up for our email list. We will not inundate you. 4 emails a month at the very most. Send us a self-addressed stamped envelope, and we will send you a PBQ podcast slush pile sticker, which I know you want. So read on, visit us, and thank you for listening.
This podcast is produced through a joint venture of Drexel University's Office of Information Resources and Technology and the Painted Bride Quarterly magazine. This podcast is the property of Painted Bride Quarterly magazine. All rights reserved.